Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Crypto Lark. Today, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and taxes, trying to give you some practical tips and things to think about when it comes to taxes, as well as some of the latest news from the Bitcoin and tax space. Before we get into that, quick shout out, as always, to everyone who's been hitting that like button, and of course, everyone who's been subscribing to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you hit that button down below, or the bell, to stay up to date with all of the latest in the crypto space. Furthermore, this is of course not professional financial advice. This is just a dude talking about cryptocurrencies and taxes on the internet. Let's get into it. Benjamin Franklin said there are two certainties in life, death and taxes. And since I'm not dead yet, let's talk about taxes. In Georgia, there is a proposition to accept cryptocurrencies for taxes. Now, if this were to happen, it would make the second state in the U.S. accepting cryptocurrencies for taxes after Arizona recently passed such legislation. I'm not sure how I feel about paying my taxes in Bitcoin, but one thing is for certain, the government wants you to be paying your taxes on your sick gains in cryptocurrencies, guys. Now, there is a massive amount of underreporting happening in the space. This arena is certainly full of people not wanting to pay taxes. And I realize that the whole conversation on taxes is a tricky one because there are a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space. Part of their reason for being involved in Bitcoin is that they dislike government. They dislike banks. They don't trust politicians. I don't either. I don't like banks. I don't like politicians. But the reality is, the tax departments of the world's major countries are eyeing up Bitcoin. And while people have been able to hide for a very long time, you've been able to onboard cash relatively easily, get your cryptocurrencies out, move them to whatever you want. Those times are ending because of things like this. Coinbase, 13,000 customers' data is being handed over to the IRS in the United States. Obviously, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of more customers whose data is not being handed over, but these are some of the bigger customers whose data is being given to the IRS. Now, Andreas Antonopoulos is one of those 13,000 people, although he says, not worried because I have always filed and paid taxes for my Bitcoin gains and losses. He's thinking ahead of the curve. I'm not surprised. It's Andreas Antonopoulos. Now, I want to give you some practical thoughts to think about here as far as what are taxable events in cryptocurrencies. The first one, trading cryptocurrencies, unsurprisingly. Anything that produces a capital gain or a capital loss. If you have a gain, you have to pay tax on it. If you have a loss, you don't have to pay tax on it. In fact, you can actually potentially write that off as a deduction for your loss. That's something you should really be keeping in mind. Exchanging. Anytime you make an exchange, that is a taxable event. Keep that in mind. If you receive payments in cryptocurrencies, there are a lot of people out there getting paid in crypto for doing freelancing work, for example, receiving bounties. Maybe you've got a pretty forward-thinking boss and they're paying you in Bitcoin. You gotta pay your taxes on that, guys. Spending your crypto. Now, this is one that is problematic for me. So if you have $100 worth of Bitcoin, or you've bought $100 worth of Bitcoin last week, this week it's worth $200, and you go out and buy a $200 phone, well, you're going to have to pay tax on $100 of that because you've had a gain of $100, and that is now a taxable situation. So not only do you have to pay tax when you buy the phone, state, federal, and all that jazz, depending on where you are, but now you have to pay tax on your cryptocurrency gains as well. That's a tricky one. I really don't like the spending crypto tax. Now look, before we get into a couple of the other ones, I really want to point out too that this so much depends on your jurisdiction. In the United States, for example, you have city laws and state laws and federal laws. When you go around the world, the approach in New Zealand or the approach in Australia or South Africa or the UK, it's all going to be slightly different. So you really have to do a lot of research here and get involved and know what your local situation is for this. This article that I'm quoting here from CNBC, this gives you some really good ideas, and in general, this seems to be the general lay of the land around the space and how it's being treated. Not everything will be the same everywhere. This article is particularly focused on a US readership, but nevertheless, it has a lot of lessons for anyone around the world looking at a tax situation. Okay, next up is converting your cryptocurrency. This one seems pretty obvious. If you buy $1,000 worth of cryptocurrency today, sell it for $2,000 tomorrow because you made some sweet gains on it, that's a taxable event. Of course, it's treated the same as selling any other capital asset. Another one to keep an eye on is airdrops. So every fork or every airdrop is considered like income. Now that's tricky because, of course, what if it's a fork but you don't actually cash it out? Are they considering, well, that's the potential value? Of course, we'll talk about realized and unrealized gains here in a minute, but nevertheless, if you are cashing out and selling all of those different airdrops, they're going to count that as income, or potentially even if you're receiving them. So definitely that's a tricky one to keep an eye on. And really, when you consider that there's this constant inflow of new forks happening all the time and all these different airdrops happening, some of which you may not even want, many of which you may not even want, and then you might have to pay taxes on those. Problematic situation. Mining is another one that is a taxable event. This is considered to be income. So you do have to be paying taxes on your mining, guys. And ICOs also do not fall under the IRS's tax-free treatment for raising capital. Got to pay the taxes on that one too, guys. Looking around here, there is still a lot of uncertainty around cryptocurrencies and how to deal with them. A lot of this, though, does come down to realized versus unrealized gains. Realized gains are when you actually cash out and take your profit, or I guess if you have a loss, take your loss. Remember, if it's a loss, you probably have the ability to get some tax deductions on that. But if you do have gains, that will be a tax you need to pay. Unrealized gains, though. So if you bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin a year ago, and now it's worth $10,000, you've made $9,000 on that Bitcoin. So long as that stays as a paper gain, and you don't cash it out, then it's an unrealized gain, and it's probably not a taxable event anywhere. One other note here too is that short versus long-term gains are taxed differently in different locations. So usually, if you have a short-term gain, so let's say you buy $1,000 of Bitcoin today, you sell that tomorrow for $1,200, that's $200 that you need to pay taxes on. You'll be taxed at a higher rate versus if you buy $1,000 of the Bitcoin today, in 1 year and 1 day, you sell that Bitcoin, and let's say you get the same $200, for example, you'll actually be taxed at a lower rate on that $200 by holding it for a longer term. So you actually see a lot of the rules here kind of favor holding on to cryptocurrencies. So that's good. The less you trade them, the less taxable events there are. The more time you hold it for, it turns into a long-term versus a short-term investment, so the tax rate actually goes down as well. Now here in New Zealand, the IRD, which is our Inland Revenue Department, they have set their sights on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. They're looking at treating it like they do gold. Might be a practical way to look at it. Over in Australia, still a regulatory gray zone. They're still working on, of course, getting out that common sense legislation to figure out a way to do it without double taxing people, for example. Over in Canada, they're eyeing it up. They want your profits, guys. In the UK, you guys might be lucky. Apparently there is a loophole, which currently, anyway, lets you exploit this and not have to pay taxes potentially if you declare it as gambling income. So in the UK, if you go to a casino, win a bunch of money, you don't have to pay taxes on that. That's pretty cool, I guess. I think that'll be a loophole that will be closed in the near future, I imagine, but certainly this tax season, it seems like something that you may be able to take advantage of. In the US and probably a few other countries, you can also do a one-time gift of cryptocurrencies to, for example, a wife or mom or dad, up to $15,000 in value. Another good way, though, if you're looking to reduce your tax burden, charity. You may want to donate some Bitcoin. Now, while WikiLeaks is a non-profit that accepts Bitcoin, especially if you're based in the US, it may be hard to convince the IRS that donating Bitcoin to WikiLeaks is a good thing. In fact, you may not even want to write that in your tax returns if you are donating Bitcoin to WikiLeaks, guys. But nevertheless, they do accept Bitcoin. Now, a more traditional charity is the Water Project. They are accepting Bitcoin, and they are going out and building wells and providing clean water for people in underprivileged areas all around the world, which is a fantastic idea. Run to Rescue is also accepting Bitcoin. They are working on the rehabilitation of people who have been victims of sex trafficking, a worthy cause as well if you're looking for some places to put some of your cryptocurrency sick gains in order to write it off as a tax deduction. Now, some final thoughts here of mine. One is to get involved. Don't just let this blow by and think, well, I'll be fine. I don't really need to pay attention to it. Look, that Coinbase thing, that's not an aberration. This is going to keep happening. This is going to be the new norm for exchanges, that they're going to be giving all their customer data to the tax authorities. And remember, you had to go through KYC. They know exactly who you are. Get involved, get ahead of the curve. Know the rules in your local jurisdiction. It's really hard for me in this video to give anything super concrete because it changes so much depending on what jurisdiction that you live in. So you really have to find out what are the rules for where you live. The tax departments are hunting for this, guys. They realize this is a multi-billion-dollar industry and that they want a piece of that pie in the form of taxes. Make sure you keep notes. Document everything. You're buying some cryptocurrencies, document it. The good thing is that most exchanges, you can download your history, which is really good. Download it, keep it, put it all in a safe place somewhere, give it to the tax man later on, let him figure it out. That's why you pay them. And the final bit of advice, I think, would be try your best. Look around, think about the things that you've done with cryptocurrency. Say, okay, I made X here, and I made X here, and I made a loss here, and I donated some to charity here. Write all that stuff down. You might miss a few things, you might make a few mistakes, but that's okay. I think that a tax agency is going to be much more appreciative of you trying to do something versus trying to hide something and them catching you. It's kind of, I guess, an unofficial thing with tax agencies. Say, hey, here, guys, I really tried. Here's my information. So, something to keep in mind, guys. Anyway, I know taxes in Bitcoin can be a very controversial topic, but I hope that you guys appreciate some of the information and tips in this video. Anyway, I want to know, what do you think about this whole situation? Hit me up in the comment section down below. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.